If you love movies and movie discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am the Wiz! Today's movie I'm reviewing, which is The Fall Guy, which is starring Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, directed by David Leitch, reminded me of one film in particular as I was watching it, and that is Tropic Thunder, Ben Stiller's classic comedy, which is probably the funniest comedy that came out in the past 20 years. It is utterly hilarious. And that's a film that lampoons not only the film industry, but it also lampoons popular culture and celebrity culture on top of that, as well as the filmmaking process and dealing with those types of people. The Fall Guy, to me, seems like it's trying to take a lot of those elements from Tropic Thunder and put a twist to it. And when you hear the story first, which is about a stuntman who gets involved with this main actor who is found missing and he has to find him, that could be an interesting kind of subversion of the story. But to be absolutely honest, this is a lighter, less biting version of Tropic Thunder. Tropic Thunder not only lampooned the film industry, but it did it in a very vulgar and crass and very biting way in some scenes. This film doesn't really go biting at all. Things that it makes fun of are things that are kind of common if you are into films. And if you've seen other films that make fun of or show the filmmaking process, it actually shows all that stuff as well. So it's not really saying anything very interesting in the satirical places. But since it's not biting and it's not vulgar and it's not like really an adult comedy of sorts, the comedy is actually kind of goofy and light, which could work, but honestly does not work. And it doesn't for a couple of reasons. One, the film is filled with like meta references, jokes, and commentaries that really do not work. It's a lot of quips from different movies, a lot of lines from different movies. Hey, do you remember what happened in this film? And hey, did you catch this reference? It's a lot of that stuff in there. It's almost like a lazy version of Joss Whedon. And I know how much a lot of you hate Joss Whedon, so that might say something for you. But along with that light type of comedy, there's also like a strange dark element to this movie, which I think doesn't match very well. There's a lot to do with drugs, violence, and a bunch of other dark things in the movie. And the mix that they use in this movie just doesn't work. On top of that, it is way too long. I saw the extended cut, which was about 2 hours and 30 minutes. I think the regular cut's like 2 hours and 15. This film goes on way too damn long. And the reason why it's so damn long is because the plot is way too twisty and convoluted for its own damn good. The film is basically the stuntman is trying to find the star of the film, who is also trying to get back with this other woman who is the director of the film. They try to make it more complex than it really needs to be or is. And none of the plot strings and the twists that they have are all that interesting. And on top of that, the twist you can see a mile away. I think the one main problem I have with this film is that the film thinks it's clever when really it is not. It's actually very surface level on all the comedy and the commentary and the meta jokes. It literally is just, hey, do you remember this? Oh, do you remember this line? Hey, do you remember this plot point? And then when it gets into making fun of the industry, it's basically, actors are stupid, right? That's pretty much the joke in this movie. None of it really does work. And yet there is also another problem that I have with the film, and it's that the film sets its rules, but doesn't stick to them. There are two worlds in this movie. There is the filmmaking world where they're making a film, and obviously Ryan Gosling's character is a stunt man, and he has to do his stunts or whatever, which, fine, okay. And that's, all right, I guess. That's just fine. But then there's the real world. For some reason, the real world acts a lot like the movie world, but there is no like winking and nodding towards that. It's more like, well, it's a movie, right? So we need to make it like a movie, even though we're trying to represent the real world. For example, Ryan Gosling's character, the stuntman, he ends up flying through a bunch of glass and windshields, doing some dangerous stunts, falling on great heights, and he doesn't really get injured that much at all. He doesn't get into much pain. But at the beginning of the movie, it's learned that he suffered a catastrophic accident that really hurt his back. And yet he's still doing these stunts and he's just fine? What? Like, wait a minute, hold on. Some of you might say, well, it's a movie. It's like, yes, but the movie is trying to be a commentary on movies. And then it's then doubling down and saying, but we're going to do the same thing that we're making fun of as the movies. And they're not being clever at all about it. Again, the film thinks it's incredibly clever and funny when it really is not. I said in the beginning that this film was trying to be like Tropic Thunder, but actually this movie is more like a film from the 90s that if you are a professional wrestling fan, you've heard of this, called Ready to Rumble. This is the David Arquette movie about pro wrestling. And Ready to Rumble had the exact same problem. Not only was it not funny, it was trying to be clever about a world that it was showing, but it really was not that clever at all. In fact, it was pretty damn dumb. But I will say this. There is one good element. Well, okay, good's not really the word for it. There's one element that's not as bad, and that's the romance part. And the romance between Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling is fine, I guess. It's not great. It's okay. It's watchable. But it really is because the two actors are just charming. And that's it. I like watching these two actors work, and I think they are charming in this movie, so the romance is watchable. The rest of it, unfortunately, is very boring and very pedestrian, and it thinks it's funnier and more clever than it actually is, which for a comedy that is a satire is not a good thing. So if you haven't noticed, overall, I do not recommend The Fall Guy. I think this is a movie that had an okay idea, but went way too safe, and the comedy doesn't work because of that. On top of that, the whole meta layering and the references really doesn't add anything. In fact, it detracts more from the movie. It just becomes more distracting, especially with how bad it is. And what they're commenting on and making fun of isn't really that interesting or compelling either. The romance is okay, and the stunt work is okay too, which I find odd because you would think a movie about a stuntman would have really good stunts in it, and this film is like, it's okay. They're fine, I guess. They're competent, which I think is really funny to think about. But overall, I do not recommend The Fall Guy. If you are interested, check it out on Peacock, but I think you can find better things to watch. Now, if you want my full review on this movie, you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. You'll have my full written review right on the site, along with a link to the video that has this review that you've just listened to. Thank you for listening to this review. If you want to know what we're reviewing in the next couple days, you can look on the screen right now to see what's coming up next. If you liked what you heard, go ahead and leave a like on this video. If you want to discuss your opinion on the film or the review itself, please leave a comment. And if you want to hear more, subscribe to the channel. Thank you again for listening. I will talk to you next time.